Hello, everyone. Hello, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. We are so excited about tonight's conversation. I feel like we just talked like last night because last week's conversation was so impactful that we are in the overflow of our mental health awareness month. Whoop, whoop. So we're excited. I have none other than my your now sister friend, Alicia Caldwell, with us tonight. We will be talking about the power of self care. Let's get real about self care. It's much deeper than a bubble bath. And we're going to get into that. But before we get into that, I want to introduce you guys to my friend. I see you all on Instagram joining fast. Hey, Tiana. Hey, Tiffany. Alicia Caldwell is not your typical licensed therapist. She's the catalyst for change. She's a new published author, soon to be bestseller. Y'all go to Amazon and get this. I got my copy. A mental fitness strategist. I love that. A professional speaker on a mission to empower others to become champions of their mental health. With 20 years of clinical counseling experience, Alicia's passion for mental well being is personal, rooted in her triumph over childhood trauma and mental difficulties she faced throughout her young adulthood. Through her inspirational speeches and transformational book, The Journey Back to Self, Alicia breaches the barriers of silence. She boldly shares personal stories about her life, the uphill battles she encountered, and the resilience she leveraged to unlock the inner peace, power, and prosperity she embodies today. Alicia Caldwell's journey of overcoming adversity isn't just about determination and resilience. It's a testament to the extraordinary potential within each of us to thrive regardless of where our stories lead us. Okay? I'm just excited by the bio. Are y'all excited about the bio?
I want to know her.
Y'all about to know her, okay? Alicia, thank you so much for being with us tonight. How are you this evening?
Oh, I'm doing amazing. What an honor to be here with you, Delisha. I appreciate you inviting me on your platform to speak. You and I have done this before, and it was such a joy. And I suspect the spirit, the energy is going to move tonight
Mm-hmm.
in only the way that a conversation with you can do. So I'm ready for whatever.
You ready for whatever? I love to hear it. I love to hear it. I'm so excited about your book. Okay. When I tell you I read this and couldn't put it down and went
Mm.
through the process and went answered the question, I had this book all marked up. Okay. So before we get into your book and just the journey back to self altogether, can you tell us a little bit about your experience in this industry, kind of what made you get into mental health?
Yeah, so like as you mentioned, through my bio, I've been a licensed professional counselor for 2 decades, and I can't believe
I know, girl, you look like you 25. I'm like, is
they.
this true? It's like, now I met you in person. I'm like, Alicia looks the way she looks on camera, guys.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you. I appreciate that. But Delisha, I can't believe it's been 2 decades, and like my journey into becoming a licensed mental health provider, it started all the way back in high school. I took this one psychology class and I recognized words that described the challenges that I was going through
Mm,
in my own family, like in my own personal life.
right.
As a child and as an adolescent, I struggled with my own mental health challenges, with anxiety and feelings of sadness and overwhelm as a result of the home environment that I was growing up in. So when I took this psychology class, and I was coming across, these terms talking about family dynamics, abnormal psychology, mental illness, and all of these different things. I recognized that there were words to go with what I was going through. And I felt less alone because of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know if any of the listeners can relate to that, but sometimes, especially if we haven't been exposed to conversations about mental health,
Right.
we're going through it, but there's a sense of isolation because we don't have the terminology to put to put to whatever it is that we're going through. So I took that psychology class, and I was already moving toward going to college. And so I undergrad was psychology, and from
Mhm.
there, I went on to get my master's degree in clinical counseling. And, as they say, the rest is history. And here I
Right.
am 20 years later, still with the fire and desire to help people to become champions of their mental health, because that's my mission. I understand that, in a lot of communities, and I'll speak specifically to the Black community,
Mhm.
there are conversations about generational trauma,
Yeah.
but I want to ignite conversations about generational healing.
Come
And
on.
that's what my life
Drop the mic.
represents. That's what my life represents. I don't only want to talk about the trauma. I
Mhm.
want to highlight and like foot stomp the
Right.
healing, because it's possible. And I'm a living testament to that reality. And my children are a living testament to the generational healing. And now I have a grandson
All right,
that's a living
grandson.
testament to a legacy that we can leave behind of generational healing. I believe in that wholeheartedly, and I couldn't speak in the way that I speak about it if I didn't.
That's right. You have some people, my guest from last week, Joy, she's on Instagram saying, yes, she can totally relate. Come on, healing. And some other people are saying, yes, they get it. We want to pass that on, generational healing, and not just, we kind of talked about that last week about being healed and Sisters Let's Heal. So dealing with
Mm.
your trauma, your drama, all of that, and come over to triumphing and living victorious. So I'm so excited that you are here to tell your story, a little bit of your story, and how people can get to the other side, right? Like it's not just about, okay, this is what we went through, this is how I overcame, and now my family in the next generation and your grandson, you had a grandson, now doesn't even have to experience any of that trauma, right? Because he has generations of healing. He's being raised by people who are healed. So I love that. I love that you are so still have that passion, right? Like after 20
Mhm.
years, some people are kind of like, okay, I did my part and everyone should be grateful. I'm going to retire or vacation or just go into another field altogether, but to still have that passion because you want people to live in their healing and how that looks. And you talked a little bit about how your past really ignited your fire to be in this industry and to help others in the mental, not only with mental health but mental wellness. And in your book, another plug, shameless plug for me, is you tell your story. And I don't want you to tell your whole story, Alicia, because I want people to go to Amazon and go to your website, aliciacaldwell.org, and buy this book. um, so I want you to tell your whole story, but if you can, you give a brief uh, synopsis or just maybe one story of that kind of really got you into this space and keeps you going when you see other young women in similar situations.
And just a snippet.
Hmm.
Um, growing up, I didn't recognize at the time um, what this concept of generational trauma, how it manifests, but it was affecting me nonetheless. What I
Hmm.
know now that I didn't know then is that, there were other women in my family, my mother included, who experienced their own trauma and didn't have, the luxury, the privilege, the resources, the access for therapy and mental health resources like we do today. Those conversations weren't being had.
Right.
So as a result of that, my father not being in my life, that had a huge impact on me as a young person
Hmm.
and as an adult woman. And if you get my book, chapter 10, I talk about self forgiveness and how that lack of a father in my life, how it affected me.
Mm.
So going through and navigating through the anxiety, the loneliness, the fears, the real and imagined fears that I battled with throughout my young life, it had this ripple effect on my adulthood.
Mm.
And as I was growing and engaging in relationships, here's what I know, that what we don't heal, it gets revealed in our relationships.
Oh, say it slow now. People just joined. They trying to get the notes. You
What we don't heal
uh-huh.
gets revealed in our relationships.
Mm,
And at the age of 19 years old, um, I had my beautiful daughter, my first beautiful daughter at 19 years old. And I recognized in that moment that it was no longer about me. My mental and emotional challenges, they were affecting me, but it was no longer only about me. I had a human being
mhm.
depending on me to be better so that she could have a life of health and wholeness, even if I didn't have those things for myself. I had to expedite the process of
Right.
figuring out how to heal so that I didn't parent her in a way that she needed a lot of healing. I have to say that I made some mistakes on my journey of parenting. And if my daughter, Brianna, is listening, she can attest to that. But what she can also attest to is that she witnessed her mother working on herself so that she could
Mm,
be a better parent on the other side.
that's amazing. I love
And
it.
now my husband,
Mhm.
because I am healing, and I say healing because it is absolutely a journey. I am not
Yes.
finished
Mhm.
with me. He gets a better version of me as well. My youngest daughter gets a better version of me. I am better in all the other spaces that I occupy because I put in the work to heal. And it is a work.
Yep.
And it is and you know, it's an evolutionary process. What I needed to heal 20 years ago, I'm healing other things still now when they show up
Yeah.
in my life, in my anxiety, in my imposter syndrome, whatever it
Mhm.
may be, I am still working on myself so I can show up at my best. I don't know if that answered the question, but I
It
just
does. It
it
does. It
flowed
makes more
anyway.
it flowed like nicely, just like it should. I like when you said we don't heal. We what we don't heal gets revealed in our relationships, and I think that's why people kind of get in unhealthy relationships, and they don't know
Mm,
why because it's things that they haven't been healed from in the past. It's kind of like why do you keep attracting these same type of people? It's not
mhm,
just those people, right? It's like your picker may be
mhm,
off or something in you is drawn to that and just getting real with self. And I think last week we kind of talked about the healing, but I really want people to focus on the journey is about them. This is the
mm,
time you could be selfish, like I'm always like,
mm,
let's not be selfish people, let's give back. But this moment I want you to be real selfish this month with you, real
yeah,
selfish with getting to your healing space. Like some people just need that first part of healing and that first part of forgiveness. And I don't want to go ahead of myself because chapter 10 is my favorite chapter. But before you get to chapter 10, you there in chapter 2, you identify the fabulous four pillars, which will remain nameless because I want you to get the book. I'm a seller. Can you tell,
I
Alicia?
love it.
I sell. Okay. But these areas of self care that you pointed out was
Mm,
physical self care, emotional self care, mental self care, spiritual self care, relational self care, professional self care, environmental self care, and financial self care. And when I tell y'all she breaks this down, I realized I wasn't self caring all through all those. Like, some of the areas were not being cared for properly. And we don't think about that because we think of self care kind of one dimensional and maybe two areas, right? Like, I'm going to take care of myself physically,
mm,
I'm going to take care of myself probably mentally, but we don't think of the other areas emotionally,
yeah,
spiritually, relationally. And when you're doing that, even with relationally, that's where you have boundaries
mm,
established and saying these are healthy boundaries. It's no offense to you, but I have to get
mm,
off the phone at 9. Like I have to go to bed at this time. I have to get 8 hours if you are one of those people like myself who need a lot of sleep. But some people don't have that. They can go to sleep for 5 and be up for another 24 hours. That's not me. So just having those is not being it's not inconveniencing yourself, it's more so creating the self that you need and being the best version of yourself. Like you said, you're being the best version of yourself for your family, for your husband, for your
yeah,
children, for your grandchildren now. So it's
mhm,
this is eventually helping everyone else, right? Like it's the importance of self-care. Now, all those areas of self-care, did you come up with those, or how was those revealed and defined?
Oh, you can look those up on you can look those up online. If you just type in dimensions of self-care,
Mm-hmm.
it'll bring up a whole list. So I gave those examples, and I believe it was maybe eight examples, just to get you thinking about the various areas of your life that need your attention. It doesn't mean you have to address every single area right now. And
Right.
I mentioned that in the book. It's figure out your greatest area of need. It might be mental, physical, spiritual, relational. And those are, some of the areas that I focus on quite a bit. But then again, like you mentioned, it could be environmental, your environment. It could be financial, if you're having financial stressors,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it might be on the emotional side. You have to figure out what it is that you need. And there's intellectual self-care.
Yeah,
We don't talk about all of these different things.
we don't.
If we are going out, like, and I'll say this, I'm learning things like with this technology that we're using today. Like, I am learning things that I didn't realize that I would be learning at this stage of my
Mm-hmm.
life. But I'm expanding my mind and I'm opening up the possibilities to be a better version of myself by being willing to learn things that are hard for me.
Mm.
That's my intellectual self care.
Yeah.
I don't want my mind to get stagnant. I
Right.
don't want to a place where I'm like, I've learned all that I need to learn, because that's not the case. There's always something, I believe, like, because I'm a lifelong learner, there's
Mm-hmm.
always something that I can be better at. And that's where that intellectual self-care can come into play. But we don't hear people talk about that as much.
We don't, and that's why I wanted to be very intentional and put it in my notes to make sure I remember about sharing that for people who are listening, because sometimes, like I said, we have only one idea of self-care, and then it may be other areas that we really need to address the problem, or where the need is, where our care is needed. Because you may, it's like you working on physical self-care, but you're fit, you're healthy, like you're just doing a bunch of stuff, but your finances are in chaos. Like you may need to focus on finance a little bit more instead of
Absolutely.
being at the gym an extra hour. Like knowing where to put your time to, I think is important. And then that helps in the healing process. Like all of this is to get to the best versions of ourselves, who God created us to be. Um, and then to go on through the book, because I don't want to take too much time on that. But another chapter that was exciting to me was chapter 5 on self-discipline. Um, and I have been doing this, like this is the way that helped me, because like my mom, shout out to my mom, she's watching, but she's a very disciplined person. And I've like, I didn't get that gift. Like I have to do stuff, but this is a definition you gave. You said involves postponing immediate gratification to attain larger, more meaningful outcomes. It requires setting clear priorities, establishing routines, maintaining consistent effort, and unwavering focus on those priorities. And that's like, I do little stuff like, say I want a certain dessert or something, I will not eat that until I've completed this certain task, right? Like,
Mhm.
and it seems silly, right? And probably childish, but it works for me. Like I still do it. I'm like, okay, I can get that cookie if I get these things completed.
Reward.
Right. Like you just want to, or I can watch something or go somewhere after I've completed this, because if not, we'll just kind of get everywhere and get into doing a lot of things that aren't necessarily bad. It's just that, are they really helping develop a better version of yourself? Not really.
Mhm.
You're just, you need to relax, but are you like just binge watching stuff and now getting different problems, or are you healthy, doing something healthy, relaxation? So I really like that chapter, and I think that the self-discipline allows us to keep self-care a priority in our life,
Mhm.
right? Because then we don't just say, oh, I may do something this week for myself. And then next thing you know, the weekend has come and gone, and now it's a new week. And you're like, oh, I didn't even do nothing.
Mhm.
Oh, well, next time. But when you have the self discipline, now you're prioritizing. Like I started doing the Focus Fridays for myself. Like
Mm.
I have to focus on the Friday on myself and what I want to do, what I want to do with my business, what I want. Like they look different all the time for me, is whatever I really need to focus on. But I make
Mhm.
sure I dedicate the Friday to that, which may be opposite of what people would like to do. Maybe they want to do it at the beginning of the week. It works for me. So
Yeah.
I found something that works, and then I'm using it. But staying to that is the key, I think,
Mm.
in keeping self-care a part of your life, because you make it a part of your routine. And
Yeah.
and it can be fun too. It's not a job. Like
Mm.
I don't want to sound like this is work, but this is fun because you feel more relaxed. You feel like I can think clear.
Mhm.
You could write another book. You got other ideas coming to your mind because your mind is free from all of these other areas that you've possibly been worrying about or
Yeah.
not taking care of properly for yourself. So, my next question for you, Alicia, like, how yeah, we get some comments. Hello, Instagram people. I see you. We are live on Facebook now. So if you want to post comments there, you can, and we can see them. We had 2 weeks where Facebook wasn't working. So, Alicia, people are just now realizing we're
Okay.
back to Facebook. So, I'm reading the ones on Instagram. But how important is it for people to heal from past trauma, um, from any relationships or life decisions they've made? Like, how important is it for them to move on from that?
Mhm. Uh, I would say it should be top of the list, right? And I say that because unless we are experiencing life from a more healed perspective,
Mhm.
we can't really experience life, if that
Mm,
makes sense. The joy, right? The fulfillment. And I talk about it, I don't know why I feel like I'm sweating. Uh,
okay, you're not.
I talk about it in my book that, for a lot of years, I looked the part.
Mm,
I was successful on the outside, but I was struggling on the inside. And there was a shame and embarrassment of letting people know, especially as a licensed therapist,
right.
that my mental and emotional challenges were overwhelming me. So I had all of these external success mile markers checked off,
Mhm.
but on the inside, I wasn't. I wasn't successful. So there was a challenge there for me.
Mhm.
And having the fulfillment that I wanted because I wasn't in a healed, healthy, or whole space where I could have the satisfaction and reap the benefits of the fruit that I was bearing in my life. So I would encourage, anyone as you're looking forward in your life. And this is like my book says, it's a journey. You don't have to try to do everything right now.
Right.
Give yourself time, be patient with yourself as you're moving through the process. But as you're working on being successful on the outside, can you work as hard with being successful on the inside?
Yeah.
A lot of us, we won't flinch when we have to do that external work. We got to go to school,
Right.
get all
Mhm.
this education, which, that's what I was doing. I was investing in the external, but the internal, I was putting that stuff off.
Mhm.
I was thinking, and I mentioned this when I speak, I couldn't educate my way out of childhood trauma.
That's it.
There were no number of degrees
Right.
was going to help me with that. And I couldn't fake my way out of the abandonment issues as a result of my father not being in my life. But what
Mhm.
I could do was heal.
Yeah.
And I tell you, um, that is the best gift that I've ever given to myself, and the best gift that I've ever given to my daughters, the best gift that I've ever given to my husband, and
Mhm.
anyone that loves me and supports me, and even to my clients.
Right.
I was still helpful. I was still doing that book related work, the therapeutic interventions. I was still doing that work, but now I show up different as a clinician. I show
Exactly.
up different as a speaker. This version of me, this healed version of me, this healing version of me, it's a different experience. And I'm grateful for it. And there's no dollar amount that you can put on it. It's priceless.
Yes. Yes, you're getting a lot of preach and amens. Rochelle said that is successful on the inside is so good. And I agree with that. And that's and I think when we are women, especially black women, like successful black women, whatever that is, but people throw that around a lot, like you're a successful black woman,
Yeah.
because of that makes us go after those things. It makes us think that
Mhm.
if we have these degrees, we have these letters behind our names, these or letters in front of our names, wherever, that we have arrived and that we should
Mhm.
look apart, we should be apart. And then unfortunately, a lot of people end up having breakdowns or mental breakdowns, and they don't know how they got there because they
Mhm.
didn't do the internal work. Like I want to make sure I'm ready for whatever God wants to reveal or have me do, right? Like I want internally to be okay with that, not where I look, oh, you look like you should speak before thousands of people. No, I want to be ready to speak before thousands of people, be ready to be vulnerable, be ready to speak my truth and confidently say it. And then as you said, coming from a healed place, because one thing I've worked with children, and one thing children can do is always tell you the truth, and they can read right through you, right? Is they're gonna tell you the truth, read right through you. Like, yeah, that looks a mess, Miss, Miss Delisha. Like, why that looks a mess? I don't like it, or no, that doesn't seem like that's real. And you want to be 100% yourself because people can read you too. And so,
Mm.
if you by you being healed, I'm sure clients you had probably wouldn't say that to you, but they'll be like, I wonder if my therapist is truly healed from something. Some things
Mm.
may have been exposed. You don't know,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying in theory that some people can probably read that and be like, well, you sound like you reliving this yourself. This is my session. Like,
Mhm.
have you dealt with your own trauma? And when you said earlier about relationships reveal things, I think that's so important. And so when we are in relationships, whether they are friendships or romantic relationships or business relationships, sometimes things aren't working out because it's revealing to us areas that we haven't worked on. Some people may do business a little shisty, and you're like, okay, wait a minute. That's
Mhm.
We don't do that. I don't lie for that. Like, this is the way I roll in business. So you start seeing other areas, other characteristics of people that you may have not experienced until you had that type of relationship with them. So I think that it's important, as you said, to get healed and understand that healing is a process. Like, we don't get to a
Mm.
certain place. And I think when we realize that healing is a process, we're patient with ourselves, and that we love ourselves and we say it's okay. It isn't um that doesn't have to be traumatizing anymore, but sometimes it still could still bother you. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And it's kind of like people give you more grace for grief. But when you're telling people you're trying to heal from something, they're kind of like, okay, you need to get over that. Like, if they can't see the scab anymore, then it should be gone, right? But internally, you can't see that. But it does
Mm.
come out in your relationships, as you said, because your emotions get involved. So I think that's essential for us to get in and get. And there's so many things you said in your book. Like, one part you mentioned about having a quiet, how to quiet the mind, and
Mhm.
how that's so important. um can you explain a little bit briefly about
Mhm.
why quieting the mind is important?
Yeah. So when we're talking about mental self care on this part right here,
Hmm.
um, and that's the chapter where I'm talking about. It's on self talk.
Yeah.
We don't always recognize that there's a mental chatter going on. And I mentioned in that chapter, I'm talking about that normal internal conversation that we have with ourselves, whether it's just like, oh my gosh, why'd you mess up, why'd you say that, why did you do this again, you're so dumb,
Mhm.
you're so this. It's that internal chatter. And when we're talking, having conversations about self-talk, often it's like, okay, move from negative self-talk to positive self-talk. But what I add in that particular chapter is not only work on shifting to a
Yeah.
more positive inner dialogue, but also take time to quiet the mind, where you're not focused on the negative self-talk, you're not focused on the positive self-talk, but you're focusing on allowing your mind to rest.
Mhm.
And we can do that through mindfulness practices. And I'm sure most of your listeners have heard of mindfulness practices, but it's
Mhm.
just giving yourself permission to sit. It may be in silence. It doesn't have to be, but it could be in silence and
Mhm.
solitude, and just be present with your environment. Just be where you are and focus on just being there without thinking of an affirmation or without
Right.
working on shifting a thought, but giving yourself just time to relax the mind, because our mind is going so much.
Mhm.
And there's so much going into the mind, there's so much output from the mind, and it's just helping you to focus on the quiet moments. And it's kind of just like the absence of thought. If a
Mhm.
thought pops in your mind, imagine it as a cloud floating away and
Right.
giving your mind another break and giving your mind that peace
Mhm.
that I'm talking about when it's a guide to your peace, your power, and your prosperity. We need that break from the hustle and bustle of the mind. And that's what I'm talking about when it's like quiet the mind
Right.
and give yourself an opportunity just to have that absence of thought, absence of worrying about what happened, what's going on right now, or what will happen.
Right. It's kind of like when I know different things that we would do, and it like with the coach and working out, and they would be like, stay in the moment, like
Mm,
stay. And I played basketball, stay up, so I was a point guard, and so you have to know the plays, right? And so you're kind of knowing the plays based off the defense you see in front of you, and you're saying, okay, do I call the coach is calling this, but it looks like they're going to switch to man and not zone. So now I need to call this play. But it's staying in the moment that's happening in front of you and not trying to think two steps ahead or
mhm,
three steps ahead. And I played chess too, and the whole point to winning chess is
mm,
doing multiple steps ahead, right? Like it's a strategy. It's
mm,
like I got to know yours, which how many moves you gonna make, and then I got to figure out what moves I'm gonna make based on your moves. But when you're trying to, you're not playing chess with yourself, okay? You're just trying to get from one moment to the next. And I think
mm,
that being in the moment, living in the moment, and simply resting, like that is in chapter 8 where you talk about self development and rest.
mm,
Like I think we dumb sometimes just don't know how to rest. Like we say I'm resting, and then we bombard our mind with a lot of media, um,
mhm.
where there is movies, TVs, or social media, and we're saying we're resting. Sometimes we can't sit quiet for 15 minutes,
Yeah.
like because then we start thinking of stuff. We're trying to fill our minds. So I think practicing and knowing, hey, Akia, knowing how to quiet your mind is essential to
Mm,
get to that place of self development because you start seeing yourself. You start embracing yourself. You start
mm,
loving yourself. And then you can, as you said, have the positive self talk and all of those other things happen to, in my mind. Now, I'm not licensed, but these are just hypothetical. I'm just saying stuff. But in my mind, I feel like those things for me personally have opened up. Like once I was able to figure out how to quiet my mind, rest in it, and
yeah.
say, you know what, this whole time, one situation that I thought was a situation really isn't. It's not even that deep. But I just needed to be quiet and long enough to know that it's not that deep. But
Mhm.
if you go into, let me tell, hurry up and call this person and get them riled up and involved, and they're like, yeah, I would have said something. And da 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 da. Now it's something that happened from someone stepping on your toe. Now it's a whole dramatic, situation with
Yeah.
multiple people involved because we simply couldn't take 5 minutes. So it's important to. I just want to make sure we didn't skip over that part and mention that tonight about quieting your mind, because even after
Hmm.
this live, some people may need to just quiet their mind before they go into the next phase of the evening or before they go to bed. This may be something
Yeah.
that you can try out tonight. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, only just saying, in as with anything, there's no cookie cutter approach
Hmm.
to self care.
Yeah.
What works for me may not work for others, and vice versa. So quieting the mind is it's sometimes easier said than done. And I've had clients kind of share with me that, deep breathing exercises, mindfulness strategies don't
Hmm.
work.
Yeah.
That they can't quiet the mind because as they're sitting quietly, their thoughts are still racing. And I encourage them to continue the practice. So your mind may not be 100% in a quiet and peaceful state, but is it more quiet? Is it more peaceful than it has been before? So your
Hmm.
level of success in quieting the mind may look totally different.
Right.
And sometimes people they need a guided meditation where there's music playing in the
Hmm.
background, or there's words that are happening, and that's their version of quieting the mind because they're focused on something that is calming
Yeah.
and peaceful versus saying, "Well, I need you to sit in total silence." That's not realistic for everyone. So it's
Yeah.
figuring out what do you need? What's your version of quieting your mind. And for some, quieting the mind, it may be just sitting outdoors in nature and
Hmm.
listening to the sounds around you, watching the birds fly, watching the tree blow in the breeze.
Right.
That may be your version of quieting your mind. So it's figuring out what it is for you. But I will say the more demand that you place on your mind, the more time you need to rest it,
Mm.
just like your body. If you go and you work out your body, which I
Right.
did today,
Bless your heart.
I needed the energy for this experience with
Right.
you. But I did that today. But if you work out, especially if you lift weights, you understand that physiologically you have to give yourself time, your body time
Hmm.
to rest and recover.
Yep.
So if we can just for a moment think of our mind as a muscle
Hmm.
and we're working the mind.
Hmm.
If there's anyone in school, if you're in college, even if you're in high school, if you're learning something hard, period, you know that you're working the mind. If you're a parent, there are some mental demands where you're working your mind. If you're in relationships with people, more often than not, you're working your mind because maybe you're managing or leading or supporting people. Your brain needs a break.
Yeah.
You have to rest the mind just like you have to rest your body.
Hmm.
They're both connected. We know that mind
Yeah.
body connection, they're both connected.
They are. That's it. I love it. I love it because I didn't want, I didn't want to seem like you just go straight to quietness. I have done a bunch of guided meditations. I still do them. Shout out to my friend Celeste. She has guided meditations on YouTube, but
Nice.
that is, you have to start somewhere, and it is a process, especially in today's world and where our younger generation has grew up with more technology and more distractions. They don't go outside and play like they used to. You used to hear kids running outside at this time. You don't hear that much. So even being in nature for us as adults is not as common. So going out and going on a hike or going to the park, just being around nature is a ways that you can process into being quiet and quieting yourself, and as you mentioned. So everyone's at different places, so try different things and see what works for you. I know that we usually do this for 45 minutes to an hour. I get excited, so y'all gotta stay with me. We gonna give grace here because we have the wonderful Alicia Caldwell with us, and we are talking about her amazing book, The Journey Back to Self. You can get it on her website at aliciacaldwell.org, or you can go on amazon.com. I wrote my Amazon review today. Alicia. So you should see that, or I think it was today. And yeah, it's a great book. But before we go, I want to really get help our women that are listening and that will listen to this replay on how they start their journey back to self. And your chapter 10 was just the most favorite chapter. I probably read it twice. Because I read it once and was like, oh, this is how we concluding things. Then I read it again and looked within and got all my notes. I'm not going to zoom in. I want y'all being nosy. But the importance of self forgiveness, like, how did you get here? Why did you leave this chapter for the last chapter? That's my first question.
Yeah. It was the last chapter because that was the hardest part of my healing journey.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a while and a lot of effort to forgive myself for mistakes of the past. Some of those mistakes were connected to my parenting. And if there's any shout out to all the parents, whether you're biologically a parent
Mm-hmm.
or if you're a parent figure to someone. But like I mentioned earlier, there were mistakes that I made that the healing version of me, as I look back, and how we're tempted to say, I wish I would have known better. The truth is, you didn't know better. Now that you do know better, what are you going to do with that? And what I hope you will do with that is start the self-forgiveness process of acknowledging first and foremost that there are things that you need to forgive yourself for,
Mm-hmm.
and identify what those things are and begin the process, whether it's a self-help journey or in partnership with a therapist, a coach, a pastor, a mentor, whomever it may be for you, because not therapy is not for everyone, even though I believe in it wholeheartedly.
Right.
But it's acknowledging first that there are mistakes, missteps, things that you have done in your past, choices that you have made that you still beat yourself up for.
Mm-hmm.
And what is
So
it?
go
Go
ahead.
oops,
No,
I was
go
gonna
ahead.
say, and
Finish.
what is it going to take? What steps are
Mm-hmm.
you willing to take to start the process of releasing yourself from the bondage,
Mm-hmm.
mentally and emotionally, of those things that are from the past, but still impacting your present and potentially will harm your future if you don't do something about it? And the biggest barrier for me, and this is kind of the bulk of that chapter, is connected to my relationship with my father, who was absent
Mm-hmm.
in my life, and I'm not going to give it away,
Yes.
but there was a deep pain and
Mm-hmm.
hurt and a lot of resentment there that lingered well into my adulthood. And truth be told, um, even where I am today,
Mm-hmm.
if I talk about certain things, I still may feel that ache.
Right.
Those relationships are important and that's
Mm-hmm.
normal. But I have forgiven myself for some of the things or all of the things that were connected to the longing and the resentment related to that relationship.
Yeah, and we're not gonna give that story away. That's for the book for you to get it. But I appreciate your transparency for the book. And when last week when we were talking about healing, we were talking about forgiveness and self forgiveness, and that's why I put up that definition. And you wrote in your book, and I quote you: "Self forgiveness may be about you, but it's not just for you."
Mm-hmm.
And that is so important and so powerful because a lot of times people are telling you, "Oh, just forgive, forgive," and we walk around, I think, and forgive other people before we forgive ourselves, and
Yeah.
not realizing we haven't even forgiven ourselves, and that could be really the problem, not really the forgiveness of that person or the situation. It's more like, you know what? I haven't forgiven myself. I forgive you, Delisha, for making this decision or getting involved and doing whatever. And so much can change from that. And you feel such a release and such a like a heaviness or a burden released if when you've truly done forgiveness work. And there's some people that just say they're sorry and, so be it. But you want to really forgive yourself so that you don't have um, all those things come up every time something happens or that's similar, or trying to determine an outcome based on something from the past because you haven't forgiven yourself for the last thing. Oh, last time this happened, this is how it panned out. This is totally different. You're not the same person anymore. You know more. Like you said, you didn't know anything at that time with parenting. You know something now. So you have some advice to give your children to raise that grandson, right? Like, ah, let me give you a hint. Don't do that. That's not going to work. Like, this isn't going to work. This is what I would advise or suggest, because you do know more now. You do know better now. And so having that healing, I think that even though this book is this chapter is at the end about self-forgiveness, I think self-forgiveness is so important and kind of the beginning of your journey back to self. Like, you give so many steps before and so many chapters before, with self talk, with self development, and all of that. But when you forgive yourself, that kind of is like the key in my mind to starting true healing and start living Alicia 2.0, Delisha 2.0. Like, you're this new version, and it's 2.0 to us, but it's, to me, it's who God really created us to be in the beginning. Like, this is who he called you to be. And so that's why I think the title is so fire, because it's the journey back to self. It's not that you went anywhere. Okay. I wanted to, whoever listened, you didn't go anywhere. You didn't know, you forgot maybe who you were and who you were called to be, and who created you and who fashioned you the way that you are. And so sometimes we need a reminder to get back to ourselves, to get back to who we truly are. Hey, Shirley, happy birthday. Sorry, I see people popping on and saying, hey. So um
Add
this
one
is,
thing there.
yes, add something there. Yes.
Okay, so because you mentioned it's the journey back to self, so it's not that you're trying to figure things out. It's going back to who you are at the core, perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
But there are some of us, myself included, that no one really helped me to develop who I was.
Mm-hmm.
I was becoming whatever I thought other people wanted me to be.
Yeah.
And that sometimes is where that people pleasing starts
Mm-hmm.
to manifest in our lives. Because I would like shift and reshape myself
Mm.
to fit into whatever like whatever box
Right.
I thought would be more pleasing or palatable to other
Mm-hmm.
people. So this woman that I am now, and for me, I'm a woman of faith.
Yes.
So discovering who I am and getting back to the core of my being, a big part of that for me was a spiritual walk.
Yeah.
And I had to go back to what God, and for you it may be a different spiritual lens, but who God says I am.
Yes.
So some of you may not have a a person, a parent, or a figure in your life who has shared in an authentic way, like who you are,
Mm-hmm.
that you are powerful,
Yeah.
that you are beautiful, that you are divine, that you were designed to do amazing things in this world. And if you stay the course, and if you have faith, and you stick to this resilience path, that you can do it.
Yes.
I had to say those things to myself. I didn't always have someone there for me to say those things
Mm-hmm.
and pour into me. And so if that is something that you struggle with, where you're saying, I don't know who I am,
Yeah.
I'm like whoever anyone wants me to be, this journey is for you.
Mm.
You have an authentic layer inside of you. Before anyone told you who you were supposed to be, you were already enough.
Yes.
You just have to recognize for yourself that you are worthy of this journey. You are worthy of self love. You are worthy of boundaries
Mm-hmm.
for yourself and toward other people. That you are worthy of all the success that you visualize in your mind. No one has to tell you that. You have to believe it for yourself and go after it. And in doing so, my hope for you is that you will attract people into your life
Mhm.
who will help to pour into your life and support you on that journey. I know in the title it says self, but this is not a solo journey.
Yeah.
It's not a solo journey. And I say it all the time, success in life is a team sport. Who do you have on your team that will
Mhm.
help you to get to the place that you aspire to be? It may be a professional, or it may be a friend, a family member. I don't know who it is for you, but who do you have to help you on this journey back to self?
You you can, if you preach, then tell me that, Alicia. I'm learning these new gifts while we're live on the internet.
It's
This
real, Delisha.
I know
We
you're
don't always have somebody to tell us.
Mhm.
We have to speak life over ourselves.
Yes. And the importance of that. And I think that tonight, I hope every woman and every man, I've seen a few men jump on here, that you have gathered and take away that importance of speaking life to yourself. And we speak, as you mentioned, we both believe in God and speaking the scriptures and the promises of God over your life, that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, that I am made in the image of God. These are things that you have to do yourself. As you mentioned, you don't, may not have someone, and even if you did have someone, these people aren't with you all the time. They don't know when you're facing situations or knowing when you need a reminder. And look in the mirror, it's something I do every day with affirmations, looking in the mirror, but sometimes you got to do it twice a day, 3 times a day. Remind yourself of who you are, who God created you to be, and how awesome and amazing you are. And if no one else praises you, you praise yourself and thank God for making you the way that you are. Um, Before we go into um, more on the importance of that, and the back of the book, this is where she's being a therapist. She gives you some assessments in the back of the book. So when I tell you however much this book is, it's worth it. Buy one for yourself and your friend, your cousin, everybody, because it gives assessments on self confidence. So many different all the chapters you have, there's assessments associated with it to help you see where you are, what you need to work on, um, and to get back to the better version of yourself. That's what I would say. So, in closing, before Instagram gets rid of us, um, Alicia, what would you want the woman who is listening tonight and may say, I don't have anybody to encourage me. I don't have, where do I start on this journey? Where do I start? Besides me telling them to get the book, where do they start on the journey back to self?
The journey begins with the truth.
Mm.
It begins with the truth of where you are right now. We can't get to any place of significance until we are open and honest about who we are and where we are right now. And that could be, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, relationally. But we have to get really honest about our junk. The junk that stinks, like stinking up our relationships, it's
Right.
stinking up our success journey. We have to identify those things through a lens of honesty. And then and only then can we start road mapping where we need to go next. I don't want you to even think about like the end of a journey. I want you to think about the next best step.
Mm.
And the next best step for someone might be, and I hope, getting the book. The next step for someone else might be calling your therapist and scheduling that appointment that you've been putting off. The
Mhm.
next step for someone else may be calling someone that you know you want to reconcile with, but for whatever reason, your pride has been getting in the way. The word self is here, but we have a partnership with other human beings. We don't live in this world solo. We
Yeah.
don't succeed in this world solo. So, first, evaluate where you are. Second, where do you want to be? And third, what are you willing to do to become that person? And often in my Live Like Her communities, I say become her, and the her stands for healthy, empowered, and resilient. What are you willing to do? Don't take don't eat the whole elephant. You know that
Right.
saying. It's like,
Yeah.
what one piece can you start implementing, maybe even today,
Hmm.
in the area of your self care that will move the needle on getting more rest, that will move the needle on you feeling more energized and recharged, that will move the needle on your relational health and well being. All you got to do is start with
Yeah.
one pebble will create a ripple effect. Another pebble, a bigger ripple effect. And before you know it, there's momentum that you didn't know you had inside of you. And that's kind of how I'll sum that up.
I love it. So before we go, as you know, I'm a woman of faith and so are you. So I will ask that you will pray for everyone and pray as the Spirit leads you to
Mm,
pray for the women who are struggling with it, who may have be in the transition of self-talk and positive talk and saying they've been talking so much and don't really hear or don't feel a peace. Pray for the men that will listen to this and
mm,
say they need to get back to self. They've never done
yeah,
self-care and they
yeah.
they see that there's steps and dimensions of it now. So can you
Mhm.
just pray for everyone before we close out tonight?
I will, and I'm gonna pray for you, and I want you to keep your eyes wide open
Hmm.
because on this journey, you need to see what's ahead of you. My prayer for you is that you will become the highest and greatest version of yourself, not because other people want you to, but because you're designed to. And I pray that you will have the energy, the wisdom, the commitment, the discipline, the self care, the self confidence, the self image, the self respect, and all the layers that are required to gain the momentum and sustain the momentum on this journey back to self. And dear Heavenly Father, I just pray that you will touch and agree with us on this mission, that every person who listens here live or listens to the replay will be reminded who they are, not because of their DNA, but because who they have been created to be. And that no matter where they started, that they have a perseverance and a power and purpose within them, that they recognize that they can thrive no matter where their roots were planted. Cover each and every person that's listening or that will listen, and allow their lives to be all that you have designed and destined for it and them to be. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Let me find out you minister on the weekends, Alicia. I love it. Thank you for allowing God to use you. That was a powerful prayer. I'm definitely going to save this and replay this and look at it myself. So many great nuggets were made. Don't forget to connect with Alicia Caldwell on her website at aliciacaldwell.org. She likes to interact on the internet. Follow her page on YouTube at Alicia Caldwell. She has a lot of things going on where she's speaking and sharing other things about that she does. And then on LinkedIn, the Alicia Caldwell. So thank you so much for being here tonight, sister. And thank you for sharing your gift. May everyone go and buy your book and become a bestseller. And I can say she was on here first. Y'all met her here um, before she blows up and we be like, who? So, Alicia Caldwell, thank you so much for being a great sister. Next week, we will be talking about sisters let's be happy with none other than Jamie Watkins, my other sister. So we want to keep this journey going. We're getting healed, we're forgiving, we are going to have an amazing summer. Okay. And we're going to be excited about it. Thank you so much for coming, and you all have a great evening. Bye bye.